Good morning, everyone. I'd like to extend a warm welcome to all members of the Corporate Overview and Scrutiny panel, other members of the Council and officers in attendance at today's meeting. Welcome to members of the public and press who may be watching the meeting live on YouTube. I'm Councillor Alexis McAvoy, Chairman of the panel. Please note that this meeting is being broadcast live and will be available for repeated viewing. Please could all councillors follow the council's ground rules for virtual meetings, which have been well circulated. In particular, please use the conversation panel to indicate any request to speak and only speak when invited to do so by me as the chairman. I will be taking recommendations by consensus at this meeting, but if a vote is required on a particular item, I will call each panel member to vote in turn. In the event of any technical problems, there will be a short adjournment to establish if the fault can be addressed. Please bear with us in these circumstances. If an individual loses connection and the meeting can practically continue with a quorum, it will do so. For the benefit of all participants and for those viewing the meeting, I will now call the name of each panel member and ask them to identify themselves as being in attendance at the meeting, as I previously mentioned. As I previously mentioned, I'm Councillor Alexis McAvoy, Chairman of the panel. So I'd now like to call Councillor Alan Alvey.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Fran Carpenter, I believe that she's given her apologies. Councillor Keith Craze.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Sandra Delamere.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Mahmood Kangarani.
Present.
Thank you. Councillor Martin Levitt.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Councillor Alan O'Sullivan. I think he is here. Councillor Alan O'Sullivan, can you hear me?
Sorry, I was on mute. Good morning, and yes, I am here.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Beverly Thorne. Not sure if she's arrived.
Don't think so.
No. Councillor Derek Tipp.
Present.
Thank you all. That's all the members of the panel. So other members of the council in attendance will be recorded in the minutes of this meeting. So the first item on the agenda is apologies. The only one to my knowledge is Councillor Fran Carpenter. And we've not heard from Councillor Thorne.
Yep.
Okay, so item one on the agenda are minutes. Now, actually, I'm advised that the minutes of the last meeting are not yet available, but will be submitted to the next meeting in November. So I hope that's okay with everyone. The second agenda item is declarations of interest. Do panel members have any declarations of any pecuniary or other interests in respect of the business of this meeting? Please indicate in the RTS and I will then ask each member to speak. No messages there, so no declarations. So if you've overlooked something, just declare it as we get to it. Item 3, public participation. There is no public here. I do need to just mention one thing. I have to leave the meeting and Councillor Alvey will take over at approximately 10:30, so I just need to flag that up to you. We now move on to item 4. Ryan Stevens is going to present the item on the council tax empty homes premium. So Ryan, are you there, please?
Thank you, Chairman, and good morning, everyone.
Morning.
So the purpose of this report is to consider the council tax empty homes premium as recommended in the December Cabinet report of last year. So this stems from the government wanting to address the issue of empty properties. And from April 2019, local authorities had the discretion to charge up to 100% council tax premium on properties that have been unoccupied and substantially unfurnished for more than 2 years. So that's empty properties, 100% premium, thereby doubling the amount of council tax that they pay. The government then introduced further changes. So from April this year, local authorities can charge up to 200% empty homes premium on council tax for properties that have been empty for more than 5 years. And then from April 2021, local authorities can charge a premium of up to 300% on properties which have been empty for more than 10 years. There are certain exemptions in place, and we have to give consideration for properties which are generally for sale or for rent, and that any owner should not put into place of hardship. And these decisions are made on a case-by-case basis and are applied regularly. For properties that have been empty for more than 2 years, the council introduced an empty homes premium of 50% from 2019, increasing this to 100% from April of this year. And then for properties that have been empty for more than 5 years, the council considered an incremental approach whereby we introduced an empty homes premium of 150% for this year, and the panel recommended reviewing this year to consider if the premium should be increased to 200%. The Task and Finish Group last year also recommended reviewing the empty homes premium for properties that have been vacant and unfurnished for more than 10 years. And again, the aim of introducing the premiums is to encourage owners of empty properties to bring them back into use. And 3.4, I provided some stats on the discretion available, the current premium applied, and the quantity. Obviously, the quantity changes on a daily basis, but it gives an indication of the types of properties and how long they've been vacant for. So tackling empty homes is part of our emerging private sector housing strategy, and the council's private sector leasing scheme is promoted on any communication that we send. So when we notify people of the premium, we will give contact details for the private sector leasing scheme. So due to the impact of COVID-19, the 2020 Task and Finish Group was not formed, and we did not undertake the review. But in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance, investment and corporate services, we're recommending to retain the current premiums, so to leave them as they are, and then have a full review next year with a Task and Finish Group. 5.1 details some of the financial implications. Again, not huge sums of money, but then this premium is not about generating income, it's all about incentivizing use and getting properties back into use. So in summary, so recommendations in point 6 is to keep the empty homes premium as they are, and then to review next year the empty homes premiums to be effective from the 1st of April 2022.
Thank you very much, Ryan. I've got some requests to speak. If I could just ask you to ask one question at a time to give other members a chance to ask a question, which may indeed answer your second question. If there's a time, we will do second questions, but just one question at a time, please. And the first person to ask a question is Martin Levitt, and I believe you want to ask it on 3.7.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I have to say, reading this report a couple of days ago, I was reminded that in Hatfield, where I was a councillor for 14 years, we didn't have one empty property over 2 years. So I'm staggered by the amount of empty properties we've got. So that's my first point. I do appreciate the Task and Finish Group couldn't have their meeting. I do appreciate that very much. But this decision about moving from 150% to 200%, and 300% for over 10 years. You've got an empty property for over 10 years. Surely we as a committee could make the decision. You see, we must.
Is that your one question, Martin?
Yeah, it is. But I just want to finish. We must, as a council and a group of councillors, diminish the numbers of vacant properties in this area, and surely pushing up the charges should happen immediately and not just be held up by COVID-19 delaying a Task and Finish. So that's my question.
Okay, thank you very much.
Delegate it to this panel to make the decision.
Thank you, Martin. Ryan, did you want to answer that question, please?
Well, the panel, we have a Task and Finish Group that is set up every year to review the premiums, whether they should be increased or not. So it might be a decision whether we carry on with that task and finish group or it comes straight to panel. I say the task and finish group do look into the implications, look into the reasoning, and make recommendations to this panel.
Okay, thank you, Ryan. Councillor Tipp.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, my question relates to the business in 2.2, where it says that properties have to be substantially unfurnished. I'd like to ask Ryan to explain what he means by furnished and how furnished is ascertained. Do they inspect the property, or is it people self-assess themselves as furnished or unfurnished? Because because the point here is, of course, that nobody but an idiot would pay 200% excess when they could simply stick some furniture in it and avoid it altogether.
Yes, no, and I'll put that in the report. A way to overcome the premium is to furnish your property. So substantially unfurnished obviously means absolutely minimal furniture. So hardly any furniture in the property. These properties are inspected regularly. So we get part of the empty homes bonus as well. But yeah, they're regularly inspected, and people, like you say, rightly, put furniture in the property. Therefore, the premium no longer applies.
Thank you.
Councillor Heron, I believe you wanted to answer an earlier question.
I just want to come in on Councillor Levitt's statement. It has been over the years quite controversial amongst councillors to simply raise these premiums. In fact, for a number of years, we didn't include a premium on empty homes because a number of councillors were of the opinion that anyone who owned a property had a right really to do what they liked with it. So it's not a simple matter that everybody agrees with it, so it's a nod through. As I say, bringing on the original premium was it took a number of years and varying opinions, and so to do so without a task and finish group, I think, would be a wrong way forward, which is why I agreed that it should come forward. And it's only another year of running on what we'd already agreed, councillors had already agreed, and that we could look at it when we could have a proper task and finish group and discuss it. And as was pointed out by Councillor Tipp, to be quite honest, if you boost it too high, people simply negate it by putting furniture into a property. So it's not a flat, simple answer. Something that the task and finish group could work through. Thank you for letting me answer.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Kangarani, please.
Yes, good morning. Actually, my question was the same as the Councillor Derek Tipp about the furniture. But my next question probably would be on top of that, is how many of those properties we have is got a couple of chairs and tables in the front room and nobody lives in it for years? Is there any do we know how many there are?
As I said, all these properties are visited regularly, so we would undertake an inspection. If it is furnished, the premium doesn't apply. If it's minimal furniture, so only one or two items, then obviously the premium does apply.
Okay, thank you. Grania, I think you'd like to say something.
Indeed, thank you very much for bringing me in. I would just like to say, from the Housing Authority's perspective, we have had a task and finish group looking and developing a private sector housing strategy, and that will be coming through the decision-making process between now and Christmas, taking through Cabinet and Council. And one of the key objectives of that private sector housing strategy is to really tackle these empty properties and bring them back into use. So certainly we are adamant that we will be looking especially at those properties that have been empty for over 2 years. So we will be bringing forward proposals as to what we do with those properties from a housing perspective. Thank you, Chairman.
Thanks very much, Grania. Anybody else for a second question? Nobody else is indicating. So the recommendations are at number 6. 6.1 is that the panel recommends to the Cabinet that the empty homes premiums remains unchanged from the 1st of April 2021. Do you all agree with that? If I don't hear anything, I will assume that you have agreed. Thank you very much. And 6.2 is to review the task and finish group in 2021. Are we happy with that? If I hear silence, I will take silence to mean agreement. Right, thank you very much for that one. So we'll now move on to item 5. Which is the council tax reduction scheme. And this is Ryan again, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So members will recall that local authorities are responsible for setting up their own council tax reduction scheme. So this is to support those of a working age on a low income to help with paying their council tax. Those of a pension age, there's a national scheme, so this applies to working age only. We currently have just under 8,500 claimants receiving council tax reduction. A roughly split, 4,400 working age, 4,000 pension age. It costs at the moment just under £9 million a year. That has gone up slightly, about 400k as a result of new claims following COVID-19, and that will affect the tax base going forward. The review process, the Task and Finish Group met last year to review the scheme and propose changes from this year, and also the group recommended a full review of the scheme this year to include consideration of whether we should introduce a banding scheme of council tax. Due to the impact of COVID-19, it's not been possible to undertake a full review of the scheme and to fully look into the banding scheme options. And additionally, making any changes now which may be detrimental may not be appropriate in the current uncertain climate. Again, in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance, we've been looking at it and recommend to leave the scheme, to not to make any changes and to fully review the scheme in 2021. This will enable us to look into the full impact of COVID-19 and to understand the impacts. It will also give us a lot of time to look into a banding scheme and also review the impact of how they've worked elsewhere, and also to align the scheme with any universal credit changes that continually evolves. Changes happen to that all the time, and again, trying to align it to that, obviously for ease of administration and for consistency as well. In 3.1, I've just put some details about what the current scheme involves, and those decisions have been made over the years. And then looking at item 4, just matters to be considered. Again, collecting council tax from those on a low income is difficult. We've done a lot of work over the years working with those in receipt of council tax support to get them into the routine of making their payments and making them pay on time. And the collection rate for those in receipt of council tax reduction who are not pensioner or vulnerable, so looking at the working age, has increased slightly up to 80%, and the overall collection rate has again increased slightly. So that's for all those people getting council tax reduction. We've collected just under 90% of the council tax due by them. I've also put in 5 some details about hardship funding. So as a result of COVID-19, the government have provided one-off funding to support those who get council tax reduction and to support those with paying their council tax. It's primarily based at working age, and our funding for this year was £886,000. All those in receipt of council tax reduction are entitled to the hardship payment. They don't have to apply to get the payment. We automatically apply that to their council tax account. When the government introduced the hardship payments, they stipulated award up to £150. However, in consultation with the portfolio holder for finance, we're awarding up to £200, so actually awarding more than the government recommendation. So to date, we've awarded just under 3,400 claimants, and about £524,000 has been awarded out of the 886. The residual funding will be fully utilised. We're also expecting an increase in new claims once the furlough ends. Although there's announcements today, so we'll have to watch this space, but we are expecting an increase in new claims for council tax reduction in the next couple of months, and again all those will be entitled to a hardship payment. And then looking at any residual funding, we will look to continue to support those in financial hardship and council tax arrears with paying their council tax. So the recommendation to the panel is to maintain the current scheme, well, with no changes from next April, and then to undertake a full review next year looking into the banding scheme option.
Thank you, Ryan. That's quite an interesting report. Can I just ask you, how does the New Forests collection rate compare with other councils?
Interesting, I had a meeting with all of the Hampshire authorities just this week, and that's one of the stats I've asked to circulate. So I haven't got any details to date, but I'm happy to provide that in due course. When I mentioned our sort of 90%, I think that seemed to fare favourably amongst others, but I can provide actual statistics when known.
That would be interesting. Thank you very much, Ryan. Questions now. We've got Councillor Craze first.
Chairman, thank you. Not so much a question. To my mind, correctly or incorrectly, what we're talking about here compares with what was discussed a few minutes ago. We're in, and we do know it, goodness knows we know it, an ever-changing situation. And whilst it would be wonderful if we could alleviate pressures on the council finances and so on and so forth, we as a council need to be totally aware of our community responsibilities. Therefore, in the situation that we're in, which is at the best flexible, we need to just maintain an eye on, and I'm fully in agreement with what Ryan has been saying, that we just hold off until next year with a view to doing something in 2022 before we make any changes. Pressures are enough, and none of us are sitting here aware of what is going to happen in the next 3 to 6 months. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Councillor Craze. Does anybody else want to speak? I can't see anybody else asking to speak. So thank you for that report, Ryan. The recommendation is at number 8, and the recommendation is that the panel will recommend to Cabinet that the current scheme continues with no changes. So I would assume silence is concurring with this decision. All is quiet on the Western Front. I see no hands. So thank you very much. So we'll now move on to agenda item 6, which is the business support grants. Again, Ryan, busy morning for you, Ryan.
It is, thank you, Chairman. Yes, the purpose of this report is just to provide a summary on the support that we've given to local businesses over the last few months via the government's business support schemes. So in response to COVID-19, the government provided funding to councils to provide support to small businesses and those in the retail, hospitality and leisure sector by way of a grant. The government then also subsequently provided funding for discretionary schemes as well, albeit with expected priorities, and I will come on to that. So the 2 grants that we had to administer were the small business grant, so that's for businesses entitled to the small business rate or rural rate relief, and that was a grant of £10,000, and then businesses eligible for the expanded retail discount, so that included businesses in the retail, hospitality and leisure sectors, so they were entitled to a grant of either two amounts depending on the rateable value of a property, so 10,000 or 25,000 grant if the rateable value was over 15,000. There was a limit on that, so only those eligible up to a rateable value of 51,000. Those above that were not entitled to any support at this stage. The government provided funding, £57 million. Any funding remains unspent has to be returned, and I know as a council we've campaigned to MPs to retain that any residual funding that isn't spent, even if it's not retained within a council, but as a county-wide, to redistribute and support businesses. That hasn't been approved or hasn't been looked at as far as I'm aware yet. We were never going to spend all of our allocation. That was never going to be achievable, and part of that we assume is the way the formula was worked out on the funding. It probably looked at all those businesses getting small business rate relief, of which we've got 900, and they were all excluded from receiving a grant because they were for personal use. So they were specifically excluded. So when the government launched the schemes, they stated that we need to urgently support businesses. So there's a real key message to get that money out there to support businesses as quickly as possible. and they wanted local authorities to act immediately. So this was a significant ask from government in a relatively short space of time as well. So we were keen to distribute the funding as quickly as possible and to meet the government expectations. We quickly identified all eligible ratepayers. We contacted them by letter. We quickly developed an in-house e-form as well, which gathered all the relevant information, had built-in security and validation checks that enabled us to make payments quite promptly. And the form went live on the 2nd of April, and yet by the 9th of April we'd already received over 2,000 applications and paid out £26 million to nearly all the businesses that applied as well. And at that point that was more than any other council in Hampshire. So it's a real great effort to get that money out in that short space of time. Again, we maximised the take-up of the grants. We sent 2 further letters to all those that we identified as eligible that hadn't claimed. We did lots of promotion on social media, on our website, in our business e-news, through other network channels. So we really did try to get that message out there. 2.7, I've just made reference to, out of all the claims that we had, 3,657, there were 3 claims which were identified as fraudulent. On discovering this, we promptly contacted the National Anti-Fraud Network and the National Intelligence Service. This was subject to an orchestrated fraud. It was a national fraud that affected many councils, and they amounted to us for £60,000. This is a national investigation which is still ongoing. So in total, we paid out over £41 million in business support grants to over 3,400 businesses, and table 2.8 just details where the payments have been made. We paid just over 97% of all those that are eligible. That may have increased slightly since the report was compiled. Some of those not eligible, we've had a few due to state aid rules, so they're not eligible. Few just didn't want to claim the grant for whatever reason. But we know we've made every effort to maximise take-up. Internal audit have undertaken an audit of the administration of the 2 grant schemes, and after a lot of detail work and reports and requesting information, they've given us an assurance opinion of substantial, which is a sound system of government and risk management with good controls existing. This is a great achievement considering that the time we had to implement this and the workload involved. So we're very proud of that. The government then subsequently introduced a discretionary support grant. They allowed us up to 5% of our estimated grant expenditure, so not of the £57 million, but of the amount that we were expecting to spend. And this is really to support those that were not covered by the initial two grants. Although it was called discretionary support grants, the government did stipulate for business sectors that they expected to be supported and included in our policy, which we duly did. And again, but in consultation with the portfolio holder, we developed our scheme and we looked at providing further support to local businesses. And this is based on locally evidenced need. And I detailed in 3.2 the businesses that we supported. So our funding was just over £2 million. And again, the grants were up to £10,000 and then £25,000. So you couldn't award any amount in between. In developing our policy, we worked with other councils across Hampshire, and grants were awarded on a sliding scale depending on the fixed monthly overheads of the business. And 3.5 provides details of the grants that we were able to award. So following the first round of the discretionary grant, we had some funding remaining. Obviously, as a council, we wanted to fully utilise the funding and support businesses. So we developed 2 further schemes. One was to go back out to bed and breakfast to try and increase take-up and maximise the support to bed and breakfast sector, and also to provide some support to those in the retail, hospitality and leisure sector with a higher rateable value. We also looked at our list of priorities as well, which I've detailed in 3.8. So once the discretionary scheme was finished, we actually paid slightly more than our allocation. And again, 3.9, I've listed out all the different business types, the number of grant awards and the total amount that we've awarded to each of those sectors. Working jointly has been a very, very positive outcome of this. We've worked very closely with different portfolios and our economic development team, and the business sector as well, and that's something that we can build on going forward. And we got a lot of really positive feedback from businesses. It was getting to the point where literally someone was making an application form, they'd get an email acknowledgement to say we've received the application, and we were doing our best to process the payment on the actual day. So an email would be sent later on in the day to say your payment's been processed, you'll get 10,000, 25,000 or whatever the amount is in your account within the next two to 3 working days. So it's a very quick turnaround, and we got lots of very positive feedback from local businesses, which was really good. Recently, the government have made an announcement about supporting businesses if there's local lockdowns. Two types of grants. Grants of up to £1,000 for businesses with a rateable value below 51,000, and then 1,500 for larger businesses above 51,000. So these will be every 3 weeks, and these grants provide businesses with a safety net as they have to temporarily close. Again, there'll also be a discretionary element given to local councils to enable us to support businesses affected by closures which aren't on the business rate list, and they'll be up to a maximum of £1,500. So we're still awaiting full details of the scheme, and obviously once we know that, we'll develop our e-forms and we'll publicise and promote that when able to do so. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Ryan. Well, actually, I mean, this really is a very good news report, and feedback that I have had from local business owners is that they were pretty impressed at how easy it was to apply, but more importantly, how quickly they got their money. So that has to be down to the organisation of, I guess, the economic development team. Very impressed. It's still disappointing that there's a small catchment of business owners who will always fall outside of these schemes because they don't have properties such as events in industries. So that is a little bit of a problem. But that having been said, I think this is an excellent report, a very good news report. I'm very pleased to see that the way that we chased up people to give them an extra opportunity to apply if they hadn't responded the first time. So the first question I've got now is from Councillor Tipp.
Thank you, Chairman. I was looking at the table on 3.9, and I noticed that only 6 market traders seem to have been awarded a grant. That seems rather small in relation to the number of market traders there must be in the district. I wonder if they're a particularly hard to reach group, and whether some of those might well have been missed out.
To be a market trader, you have to have a fixed property within our district, and we don't have many of those.
Okay, that's answered your question. Thank you. Councillor Levitt, you want to ask a question? I guess this is in addition to the questions you've already put to Ryan. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay.
No, it's not a question really. It's an observation. Firstly, Ryan, thank you very much for your 20 minutes yesterday on the phone. It was most interesting for me to go through the frauds, obviously, and the discretionary grants as well. But my observation is, I'm just concerned that we have 60 councillors, and I'm sure lots of them come into contact with small businesses and what have you. And if they've got complaints, it'd be really helpful if all those 60 understood exactly, very briefly, what our officers have done for the benefit of those businesses. The 3 letters is a pedantic thing to talk about, but it's a very important point to make to complaining residents who are business owners. That's the point I'm labouring. I do apologise.
Okay, so that's really just an observation. So thank you for that, Martin. Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. My comments are also an observation, just to really and a thank you to all the officers, Alan Bethune in particular, Matt Callahan and Ryan Stevens, but all of the officers, all of the teams, in terms of getting this money out of the door so efficiently and quickly, and putting New Forest District Council right up at the top of the league table of other district councils and other councils in how quickly they responded to what had to happen. And I just wanted to make the point that they're a very efficient group. We know that day by day. They have their systems and things work very well. But this wasn't something that they could just slot into and get on with. It had to be invented from the very top all the way down. There were no forms, there were no procedures, there were no bank accounts, there were no specifically for the project. They had to make it up and make it work. They also had to make sure that the money wasn't being sent to the wrong people. And we've heard about a fraud, a national fraud, some of which touched the New Forest area. So I just wanted to praise and thank all the teams for getting this money out to the local businesses who desperately needed it. And I accept that there were some businesses who didn't get it because the rules simply didn't allow it. And for them, I'm genuinely sorry. But overall, the vast majority of businesses that qualified for this support got it and got it very quickly. So thank you, Madam Chairman, and thank you to all the teams involved.
Thank you, Councillor Harris. Councillor Kangarani.
Yeah, just a couple of points actually. One is about the amount of grants we received from the government was nearly 57 million, and the money was given out. It was only 41 million. Am I correct to read that? And also from that, you have taken £170,000 to administrate that funding. Am I doing my sum correct? Is some money missing somewhere, or it's just not given out?
If I can answer that, Chairman.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so 2.2 in the report I've talked about, the government funding was £57 million, and like I said, 900 of those were beach huts. If they're entitled to 10,000 each, that's £9 million. We think when they did the formula for working out our allocation, they just took all our small business rate recipients, how many of those get small business rate relief, and like I was saying, 900 of those are beach huts. They are specifically ineligible for a business support grant.
That 2.8, if you can look at point 2.8, you're giving 41 million out.
Yeah.
57 million. Is that what happened to the rest of the money?
Well, as I say, on 2.9, we've paid out to roughly 97% of those that we think are eligible. And we've looked to identify those. We've excluded ones that get state aid, etc. So we're confident that we've given as much support as we possibly can. We sent 2 letters, email, social media, etc. So we really have tried to maximise publicity and ensure anyone who's entitled to a grant actually gets one. I even walked by a property as I was down the high street a few weeks ago, knocked on the door and chatted to the manager because I know she hadn't got one, and she said they're not applying because of state aid rules. So we really have done all that we can to maximise that.
I understand that. Obviously, you still haven't told me where the rest of the money gone. I know you tried to pay to everybody, but just my son said there is some money left in the kitty.
Chairman, if I may, again in section 2.2, Councillor Kangarani, it does confirm that any funding which remains unspent has to be returned. Okay. So in essence, we were allocated the 57.85 million by the Department for Business, Education and Industrial Strategy. That money will be returned back to that department, to that government department.
Okay.
Thank you very much for that. Thank you.
Can I just, I'm the owner of small businesses myself. I was just at 0.3.5. Have I missed that completely? I didn't receive any notification that I can claim more money on that basis. More grant. Which is
3.5.
Yeah.
It depends. If the business already had a small business rate grant or a retail, hospitality and leisure grant, you weren't able to claim the discretionary grant as well.
Okay, I got that. Okay, that's why you're not right. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Dunning.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Michael Harris is aware of the fact that nurseries and horticulturists seem to have missed out on these grants. Is there any way we can support these very valuable businesses which have invested lots of money in the local area but have had no support from this grant situation? Maybe Michael can answer that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barry. As the document said under 3 3.9, with the discretionary grants, I argued very hard that the agricultural businesses should be included. I got them moved up the ranking, and as you'll see, there were two agricultural businesses who received £50,000. So we did what we could with the money that we had available. At that point, we were down to £2 million for discretionary grants. And we were able to do something, and I think one of the businesses that you and I have communicated about were successful in getting some of that money. So they were included.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. Yep.
Okay. All right, then. Thank you. And Councillor Jeremy Heron, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Michael did quite a good job of thanking the officers and discussing how well I think that this organisation has done. And I am aware, obviously, that we have managed to miss out some sectors, which is very unfortunate, and Councillor Dunning highlighted that. But that is £41 million into our local economy, and that money will be spent, does go around. So it was vital that we got it in, because it doesn't just sit with the business that receives it, but it does percolate down through our local economy and ensure that other businesses get the benefit of that support, because companies continue to spend and continue to buy within our district. So it was vital that we got it out quickly. I'm so proud of our authority and Ryan's team for working on that and getting it out. I must say that it was a significant amount of money, and as portfolio holder it gave me sleepless nights until I started hearing businesses were receiving it, because that was enough money for, as Ryan said, a national fraud. And I was worried that we'd wake up one morning and no New Forest business would have received any money, and when we would be front page news. So I was truly delighted when businesses started saying how pleased they were to receive it, and with the very short space of time and the security that was necessary, just a fabulous job done by our team. And I'd like to add my congratulations. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So has everybody finished their questions? I've got no more requests to speak. So the recommendation is on page 19, and it's the recommendation is to note the report. So we'll move on now to agenda item 7, which is the review of complaints. I'm not sure if Grania's going to introduce it or Karen.
Okay, thank you very much, Chairman. I will start. So, Chairman, you're absolutely right. I'm here with Karen Grimes, our Corporate Complaints Officer today, and we are presenting the annual complaints report, which covers the period between the 1st of April 2019 to the 31st of March 2020. Chairman, this is a report which comes to COSP every year, and it actually looks back at complaints received during that period and how they were dealt with. Chairman, you have various appendices within the report, which hopefully gives you relevant information, which will be of interest to the panel. Chairman, just a few things to note. It is good to see that complaints are down on last year's figures from 97 to 78. And with regard to Ombudsman complaints, you will see that there have been no findings during the reporting period of maladministration or any justifiable complaints that have gone to the Ombudsman. However, Chairman, what I would say that, of course, any justifiable complaints that the Council has dealt with is still a complaint too many, and it is really important that we continue to learn and services continue to learn, and when they are presented with a complaint, if indeed there has been a mistake, I think it's very important that early on we hold our hands up, we apologise and take remedial action to resolve the complaint quickly. So, Chairman, that's all I wish to say by way of introduction, and Karen and myself are happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Grania. So the first person with a question is Councillor Kangarani.
Yes, good morning. And my question was, is there any procedure to, if there's a complaint against any councillors, do you have any procedure on that?
Yes. Okay. Now, this is about corporate complaints. We have a separate complaints procedure regarding councillors and alleged breaches of the Code of Conduct. That is quite separate to this corporate complaints report. That's a separate regime.
Thank you.
Okay. Does anybody else like to ask a question? Or are we quite happy with the report as presented? It's quite detailed. It gives us quite a bit more information than we've had before. And I have already mentioned to Grania that I would like to see a graph maybe over 5 years so that we can see a trend, and Grania will ensure that that's available for the next report. So thank you for that. Thank you. So if there are no more questions, nobody is indicating, the recommendation is at 7 on page 22. I think we'll take all three together. It's that the report be noted that the service managers and executive heads be encouraged to ensure that employees respond appropriately and in a timely manner to customers who appear to have received an expected standard of service from the council, and that the service managers and executive heads be reminded to review complaints about their services regularly and to implement any learning from them. So that is just really for information and for noting. And I will say I'm quite pleased to hear Grania say that we will put our hands up if we've got something wrong. Nothing is more irritating to a resident to make a complaint when something is wrong and we try and fob it off. So well done, Grania. I think that's very good.
Thank you.
Are you trying to speak again?
Yeah, if I don't mind. About a couple of months ago, a couple of residents of mine and my ward, they complained that they have been complaining about the bin collection for the past 4 years. And I think now it's come to an end now. I think their complaint is successful now, because what they're complaining about, what the businesses, they leave their bins on the road, and when the refuse is collected, the business do not come back and collect their bins after it's been left on the road for a couple of days. And I think it takes them 4 years to get that one sorted. I just wondered.
I think that bin things was actually reflected in the report, and they do seem to have been resolved. So that's quite good. So thank you very much for that. So we'll move on now to agenda item 8, which is the work programme. I'm not sure who talks through the work programme. You should actually have had an update to the work programme. There's an item which has been added to it, which I have been asking to be added for about the last 18 months. And the idea of that item was to come forward with money saving ideas to help the council. If maybe it had come forward a little earlier, this time is ripe now to implement some of those money saving ideas, but it is on the work programme now, so I'd be keen to see how that is progressed. So Andy, do you go through the work programme?
I've got nothing to add, Chairman, to it. If members have got anything to add, then we can take a note now. But the item that you referred to is there, as you can see, about 2/3 of the way down the list on the updated work programme circulated.
Yes, and will we have some sort of timing start date to get this off the ground? I think that Alan Bethune made some suggestions yesterday, so can we sort of see something imminently going forward with this?
Yeah, I'll aim to get something back to the panel for November, Chairman.
Brilliant. That's
I
all.
will have a strategy to take it forward. Yeah.
And I'll have to stop keeping on to you, won't I? So thank you very much. Happiness all round. Okay, so we're moving forward more quickly, and it's the portfolio holders update now. So Councillor Rickman, please.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Good morning.
Good morning.
I find it really refreshing this morning on several of your early reports that there's a level of optimism, taking things forward in the strange times in which we all live and try and do these things. And it really touched me when Ryan said how proud they were of the service they give. And we should all be proud of that, both members and officers, of the efforts of recent months in unprecedented times and a lot of pressure. There is masses going on. and we have to say whatever normal is, life does go on. So with that in mind, one objective I want to introduce now is that we've been having fairly full COVID-19 reports from every portfolio at the opening of the cabinet meeting. My intention now is, because as Ryan mentioned earlier, there are announcements nearly every day, is that we want to give the information to the members as up to date as possible. So what I intend doing is that every cabinet member then, if required, if it's new business or new information, the portfolio holders will do it on the day. So it doesn't necessarily go through any briefing. It's to give members the information as up to date as we can. Obviously, there is a lot going on about money and central funds. We have the comprehensive spending review going on at the moment, and today we have sent a letter of support to the Solent LEP for the work they do, which is very important in the future of areas like Waterside and helping all areas of the New Forest to get going, to get economic recovery going. I think that's all I need to say. I'm going on forever, but I'll take any questions, Chairman.
Any questions for Councillor Rickman? No RTSs in the box. Oh,
can I ask a question? I put an RTS now, if you don't mind.
okay. All right then. Councillor Kangarani.
Given the New Forest had very low COVID-19 patients, relatively, do we have to follow the government restriction per letter, per se, or can we have some discretion on which one we can choose to apply?
Okay, that's kind of a little bit about what I was just trying to say, to give members as up-to-date information as we have in the area that we are. It is true, you have to remember that we are quite a big tourist area, so whilst that business was decimated this year, nevertheless it does mean big movements in and out of our area. As we go into the winter months, that tends to drop. So we have to follow the central guidelines, but we will keep everything as up to date regarding the New Forest that we possibly can.
Right, thank you, Councillor Rickman. No more questions for you, so you've got off quite lightly. I won't ask you anything. I'll let you have a peaceful time. I'll store up something for next time.
I know
so,
you will.
Councillor Heron, please.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes. I could, like Councillor Rickman, say quite a lot, but I will try to keep it as brief as possible.
Oh, that's a relief.
Thank you, Chairman. And so I will only speak on one aspect of my portfolio, and that is the telephone system. As all members are aware, we have recently switched across on our telephone system, and whilst we had to do that fairly quickly because it gave us a significant saving, we were at a point where we either went live or we would have to pay a further amount of money to keep the old system going, and that would have been quite expensive. So we went a little perhaps earlier than I would have liked. So a little bit of our testing was perhaps done live as opposed to ahead of it, but well worth the saving that it generated. Unfortunately, as with all these things, it did create a small problem in the main point at which the telephone calls are handled and put onto the Skype is in Gosport, and we have a backup system at Appletree Court. Unfortunately, the Gosport system fell over and we were dropping calls, and we had to move to our backup system at Appletree Court, which has functioned well. Whilst we investigated the problems at the main facility, we tried several cable changes, switches out in case it was a simple problem with the cable. It didn't seem to be that. We have now swapped across our SBC, which is a session border control, which is the hardware that controls that call. We are now back, as far as I'm aware, I haven't had an update to say the country back live on the Gosport exchange over, and that seems to be running well. So a very complicated project that a lot didn't have a huge amount of experience in. Whilst we're quite good on computers, telecommunications is quite a specialist area of that with voice over IP. So a project that was quite complicated that we've implemented that's given us great savings, and a huge amount of connectivity. We still have some issues with the web chats not working. They were going to test that on the 18th. They haven't had a report back on how that's gone, but most of the issues now being ironed out and up and functioning well. And with that, I think I'll take any questions.
Okay. And the RTSs, I don't seem to have any at the moment, so you've left everybody stunned, Councillor Heron. So in that case, we'll move on now to Councillor Harris.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Very conscious that you have 5 minutes before the County Council beckons for your time and attention. So just a few things. Clearly, a lot of work been going on, getting grant monies out of the door and supporting businesses in that way. But at the same time, the team have been looking to the future to say what is it that can be happening to support businesses in time to come. And so a number of initiatives are now about to be launched. You may have heard of the Kickstart scheme, which is to support 16 to 24-year-olds, to give money to businesses to employ 16 to 24-year-olds for 6 months. So to get people back into the routines of work, younger people, get them back into the routines of work. So we will be working on a scheme to support those people within the New Forest. Pop-up business school is another initiative that's being launched by the government, and we will be working together with probably the New Forest Business Partnership to help support that. And generally, business mentoring and support for businesses going forward as they come out of, hopefully we come out of COVID-19, albeit that we're looking like another second potential lockdown in certain parts of the country. But nevertheless, we're working hard to try and support businesses as they emerge from this dreadful pandemic. Chairman, a busy time, uncharted waters, but we're going to navigate through them. We will come out the other side.
Yes, thank you very much, Councillor Harris. As you know, I attend those meetings with you, and it is quite exciting. It's exciting that we're looking ahead to the future now, rather than just keep looking back over our shoulder. So I'm sure that Councillor Kangarani's question is going to be very brief, so that I can go on time.
It's actually about the 16 to 24 unemployed people. I did apply to have to get if any volunteers available, but I understand you cannot apply as individual business. You have to apply as a group of 30. Can you explain that, how it works? As an individual businessman, I cannot apply to have this 16 to 24 because it's a number limited. I don't know how it works. Basically.
Is he conflating different conversations here, Councillor Harris?
No, I don't think so, Madam Chairman. He's right. The scheme originally was targeted at much bigger businesses, and so various bodies said, "Oh, hang on a minute. What about the smaller businesses?" What they couldn't do was deal with each individual business. So they said, "Okay, we will group them." And so we are working with, and as I say, it could be New Forest Business Partnership. It might be Hampshire Business Association. Yes, Chamber of Commerce, but a grouping of up to 30 businesses will then be able to apply for this. So Councillor Kangarani can join in, but he'll have to be part of another group. So we're working on this. It's going to come. It's going to happen. We're going to make it happen. But we're as I say, we're waiting to find out who is going to be. The government are going to say, okay, we authorise the following body to deal with this, and once we know who that body has been appointed, we can then start making it happen.
Okay, right. Thank you very much, then, Councillor Harris. Councillor Rickman, you want to have a word?
Just to add to what Councillor Harris has just said, looking at those grants yesterday, they will be very much aimed through training organisations, so that this money leads, we hope, to permanent jobs for these young people. We want to give them a future, not just a quick fix.
Brilliant. Thanks very much then. So nobody else has asked to speak. So item 10 on the agenda are dates of the meetings for 2021 to 2022. We'll just agree those dates and move on to item 11. Any items that I decide are urgent, I have none. So I'd like to thank you all for your attendance, and I'll now declare the meeting closed.
Thank you.